About 5,000 people have visited the summit of Mount Everest, the highest point on the planet. But only a few brave souls have managed to reach its opposite, the deepest place on Earth. The conditions on Mount Everest are harsh, but nothing compares to what awaits a person at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Absolute darkness reigns there. Metal structures bend under tremendous pressure, and fountains of liquid sulfur erupt from underwater geysers. We'll talk about people who decided to dive into this world later, but for now, let's follow the path that needs to be followed to reach record depths. Pearl collectors and amateur scuba divers usually dive at a depth of 40 meters. Sunlight penetrates up to 200 meters, and about 90% of all living creatures in the ocean live here. Light provides photosynthesis. Phytoplankton grows, which serves as food for crustaceans, and they in turn serve as food for fish. A record scuba diving was set at 332 meters. Below, at a depth of 200 to 1,000 meters, the so-called twilight zone begins. Here, the light almost does not reach the bottom. Its share is less than 1%. Animals have learned to compensate for this by bioluminescence. They emit their own light to attract prey or scare away enemies. 565 meters is the record diving depth of the emperor penguin. Photosynthesis is no longer possible at such depths, so there are no plants there. But fish and other inhabitants are still found. Many hide here from predators. After 1,000 meters, the sun's rays no longer penetrate. The record dive of a military submarine was 1,027 meters. Siphonophores, colonial organisms that are close relatives of jellyfish, live here. They unite around a long tube that serves as their common digestive system. When a fish swims up to them, attracted by the light, the siphonophores release poisonous needles, and the victim becomes the prey of an entire colony. Then begins the zone of midnight, eternal darkness. There is very little food here, so deep-sea creatures spend a minimum of energy. Many of them do not actively hunt, but simply drift, collecting the so-called sea snow particles of decomposing organisms, fish remains, excrement, dust and sand that settle from the surface. Giant squid are found at a depth of 2,200 meters. It is here that they fight legendary battles with sperm whales, which descend to such depths in search of food. Anglerfish live at about 4,500 meters. Her bait glows thanks to the bacteria living in the growth on her head. For the victims, this flame seems like an appetizing worm, but in reality it becomes a death trap. Internet cables are laid at 6,100 meters along the ocean floor. More than 99% of the ocean volume is located at depths over 6 kilometers. To get even lower, you need to look for tectonic faults where plates collide, forming depressions and underwater volcanoes. This is how the Mariana Trench arose. It is located south of Japan, stretches for 2,550 kilometers with a width of about 60 kilometers and resembles a sickle. Despite its size, it is one of the least explored places on the planet. We know much more about the surface of Mars than we do about the Mariana Trench. The pressure here is capable of turning any living being from the surface into a bloody cloud in a microsecond. It is comparable to the weight of a 500-ton block of stone. The bottom of the depression is pitted with geysers that emit sulfur and carbon dioxide. For organisms living on the surface, such emissions are fatal, but for the locals of the depths they are vital. The existence of the deepest point of the ocean became known in 1875, when an expedition on the ship HMS Challenger first measured the depth and recorded an indicator of 8,184 meters. However, accurate data was obtained only in 1951, when the crew of another British ship, using sonar, detected a depression 10,994 meters deep. Then it was called the Challenger Abyss in honor of both ships. In 2014, scientists from Hayden Ecosystems discovered a new fish here, a deep-sea slug that lives at a depth of more than 8,000 meters. He is pale, with a long tail, without scales, fragile in appearance, but perfectly adapted to extreme pressure. His cells are filled with special fats that keep the membranes fluid in conditions of extreme cold and pressure. The slug has no competitors. There are almost no other predators at this depth. At the very bottom there are sea cucumbers, albino woodlice and giant unicellular foraminifera. They feed on sulfur and methane from underwater sources. Sometimes a dead whale sinks to the bottom, and then a feast begins for the inhabitants of the depression, which can last for months. In addition, lakes of liquid sulfur were found at the bottom, similar to those that exist on Jupiter's moon Io. The first people to reach the bottom of the Mariana Trench were scientist Jacques Picard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh. On January 23, 1960, they descended on the Trieste bathyscaphe. Their journey lasted almost 5 hours. There was no scientific equipment and cameras on the device, so it was not possible to conduct research, and the silt raised from the bottom completely blocked the view. But the main discovery was made: there is life at a depth of 11 kilometers. Picard claimed to have seen a fish, but scientists believe it was a sea cucumber. In addition, he proved that even at such depths there is water movement, which destroyed the idea of the possibility of dumping radioactive waste in the ocean. However, due to the enormous risk, new expeditions were not carried out for a long time. Only half a century later, the next attempt was made. In 2012, director James Cameron, known for the films Titanic and Avatar, built his own deep-sea Challenger bathyscaphe and descended into the Challenger Abyss. The device resembled a vertical torpedo and was equipped with a variety of systems, including 3D cameras and a manipulator for collecting samples. The dive took place on March 26, 2012. Cameron had planned to spend 7 hours at the bottom, but due to engine failure, he stayed there for only 3. Nevertheless, he managed to collect soil samples, in which live microorganisms were later found. After that, the expeditions resumed only in 2019. Businessman and researcher Victor Vescovo on the Limiting Factor submarine not only repeatedly plunged to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, but also reached the deepest points of all 4 oceans. He also set a record for diving depth. In 2020, Chinese scientists on the Fenduji spacecraft, which means aspiring forward, descended and even conducted a live broadcast from the depths, showing viewers the ocean floor in real time on screens in Beijing. Despite technological progress, the Mariana Trench remains one of the most mysterious places on the planet. Each expedition brings new discoveries, unknown creatures, features of extreme life, and even traces of human activity. Plastic bags and candy wrappers were found at the bottom, and particles of pollutants were found in the organisms. What do you think about this story? Write in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channels so you don't miss any amazing new stories. See you.